step number 10 here is going to be applying the finish to it. We've sanded it, attached the top, and everything's ready to go. And if you recall, I have the one example board that shows different types of wood and different finishes that we can apply. Now, no matter what, we are going to spray some lacquer on here, and it's going to be that clear glossy look. And if you notice, again, half this board I've stained darker and the other half is just the lacquer only. And so you can make a decision on your project if you want to just lacquer only, or if you want to stain it a different color and then do the lacquer on top of that. Just a couple suggestions. If you are doing walnut, which is this one here, or cherry, which is this one here, you'll notice that the top half is just lacquer only, the bottom half is stain and lacquer, but there's not a big color difference between lacquer only and stain and lacquer on those two. And so again, if you're doing walnut or cherry, I would recommend just lacquer only. It's not going to make a big difference. But if you're doing maple or oak or alder and you want to change the color, we can apply some stain. And for my project, I've decided I'm just going to do the lacquer only, but I do want to still show you how to apply some stain in case that's what you want to do. You will definitely want to take an air hose and blow off all the dust off your project. It may have collected some dust as it sat on your shelf or other things, but just right before we apply the lacquer or the stain, let's make sure we blow it off. In this yellow cabinet here over by our spray booth, we have all of our stains and lacquers and other things like that. And so if you'd like to stain your project, in here we've got a lot of these supplies. Brushes, some stain, gloves, all those things. I want to show you staining in case you want to do that on yours. I'm just going to do this on just an example board here. And we've got all sorts of different types of stain in our yellow cabinet over by the spray booth. Most of mine are just going to be kind of just a darker brown. If you want to go out and get your own stain and bring it in, you're welcome to. I would also recommend wear some gloves, and I've got these in that yellow cabinet over by the spray booth where I keep all my lacquer and stain. So get some gloves on when you do this. Understand that this stain is going to stain things. So if it gets on your skin or your clothes or anything, it's going to stain it and it doesn't really come off very well. So be careful not to splatter things around or drip things anywhere. You notice also I've got some butcher paper down so I don't get any on my bench top or anything like that. We've got a few little brushes, some foam brushes also in that yellow cabinet that you can use to spread it. When you get your stain here and you take the lid off, you're going to want to stir this. If it's settled for a little bit there, the stain may have separated a little bit. And I've already stirred this, so we're ready to go, but you're going to want to just take a scrap stick and stir it up. I'll just take a little bit on a brush. You don't need to soak it completely, and then just paint it on here. And we want to just get the whole thing covered really well. And one thing with staining, again, you just want to avoid drips everywhere. Some people think that if you put so much stain on, it's going to get darker. And honestly, the color is going to be the same color no matter how much stain you really put on here. We just want to get good coverage to cover the whole thing. But it's not going to get darker and darker the more stain you put on. So just get one coat coverage on here, and you can work in small sections if you'd like instead of trying to do the entire thing all at once. Just get one little small section. And then the most important thing you need to make sure of when you're staining, because you can see it's kind of splotchy a little bit right now, but after you've wiped it all on or brushed it all on, you need to make sure and take a small dry cloth and wipe it dry. So the stain right here is just penetrating into the wood, but we need to take a cloth and wipe it smooth and dry. If you don't do this, it's going to dry all splotchy and clumpy. And so you definitely want to wipe that nice and dry. You don't want any drips anywhere on your board when you're doing the stain. So go ahead, and if you want to use the stain, we can do so, and we'll get our whole table painted inside and outside and then wiped dry with a rag. And these little rags I have in that cabinet as well. Okay, make sure when you are done, all your rags, gloves, anything that has a stain on it goes in our metal trash can with the lid right here. This is crucial that you put all your stuff in that can with the lid. That'll help contain the fumes and make sure it doesn't have any fire spreading. When it's all ready for lacquer, again, make sure all the dust is blown off. Bring it over to the spray booth right here and I'll get it lacquered for you. You'll need to let it dry for a good 15 minutes or so, and then we're going to lightly sand this with a little scuff pad and do a second coat of lacquer. When checking to see if the lacquer is dry, don't just take your hands and touch on the top. In case it's wet, you'll get some fingerprints all over it. Instead, maybe use the back of your hand and just kind of gently just tap on the back just to check to see if it's dry. If it's tacky at all or sticky, let it dry a little longer. But if it is dry, we need to go ahead and scuff it. And I have these little purple sponge sanding pads, just some really fine sandpaper. And you'll notice that the top, or all of your project after the first coat of lacquer is on there, it's kind of rough. And you spend all that time sanding and now it feels kind of rough. Take one of our sanding sponges here and you just want to sand the entire thing. And hit it pretty hard. You might get a little bit of some white, dusty looking stuff on here, so as you scuff your whole project, anywhere where there's been lacquer sprayed, we need to go ahead and scuff it. When you're done scuffing, it'll feel a lot more smooth, and it'll need one more final coat of lacquer on here. Don't worry if you see any like little white dusty stuff or other things after scuffing it. It's just that dried lacquer that's been sanded, and it comes off when we put our final coat of lacquer on here. We're going to let this dry for at least 15 minutes and then you should be all done. The very last thing on your paper, it just has you write down your shelf number on your paper and put this on your shelf so I can give it a grade, and then you can take it home. Congratulations on completing your splay legged table.